The frigid winds wailed as the extraterrestrial vessel dropped over the desolate, frozen steppe. The atmosphere was harsh, a desolate expanse of snow and eyeballs extending to the horizon, resembling an alien landscape. The group encountered merely a trivial impediment on a primitive terrain of a regressive planet they had subdued. Prior harsher environments, including Earth's frigid zones, were no exception. The alien commander surveyed the terrain through expansive luminous screens, his species filled with pride. Technologically superior civilizations had long derided planets such as Earth. It was not merely the humans were regarded with disdain, although the circumstances that molded them, such as this frozen desert, were contemplated by the commander. Evidence of Earth's triviality: no life exists here that merits examination, nor anything deserving of reverence. The riches concealed beneath the ice were of paramount importance. Such a feeble planet, one of the officers said as they prepared their equipment, struggling to endure their own temperatures. The commander nodded, his gaze riveted on the data. Flowing across his screen, "We shall assert our requirements and abandon them to languish in darkness. They pose no threat to the ship." Landed with a seamless mechanical hiss, ramps deployed and extraterrestrial soldiers emerged. In heavily armored suits, they advanced into the frigid wind. Their technology was cutting edge, Dart engineered to endure severe temperatures, and they felt invincible when they deployed scanners. Drones intended to map the terrain were significantly misaligned from their designated landing site. Concealed in the tundra's shadows, eyes observed the human special forces unit known as the Frozen Guardians. They had been observing the alien vessel's approach for hours, possessing an intimate knowledge of the terrain acquired over years. They had trained in these harsh conditions, mastering the ability to traverse the snow with ghostly agility for combat. Temperatures lethal to most within minutes defined the tundra as their habitat, and they were its dominators. Commander Reynolds hunkered low, his white camouflage easily blending into the surrounding snow. He remained silent. His squad had been briefed and was prepared. When he elevated his binoculars, he discerned the extraterrestrial. Soldiers traversing the ice exhibited palpable arrogance in their demeanor, oblivious to the peril that awaited them. They believe the cold is their sole adversary. Reynolds considered that they have never encountered anything akin to us. The aliens advance with they efficiently utilized their technology to cut through the ice, expediting their goal to extract precious minerals located beneath the tundra for them. This was customary on another planet. An additional resource to exploit and another primitive species insufficiently robust to withstand. Yet as they ventured further into the frozen wasteland, conditions began to alter. The temperature plummeted even more. Their equipment, previously reliable in the controlled atmosphere of their ship, began to exhibit indications of strain. Minor faults occurred, sufficient to induce dissatisfaction among the crew. However, the captain downplayed these issues. Problems persist. He decreed that the weather is inconsequential, as we are vastly superior to it. These conditions rendered the tundra far from inconsequential. It was vibrant, not in a manner comprehensible to the aliens, yet one that the humans had come to honor. The snow, ice, and wind constituted the battleground, and the special forces were adept at utilizing them. Reynolds signaled that the initial strike would be swift and silent. His crew was already in position concealed within the snowbanks, awaiting the opportune moment. The aliens remained unaware of the impending peril. Subsequently, a sudden explosion shattered the frigid atmosphere. Not from a weapon, but from the Earth itself. One of the extraterrestrial machines triggered a trap set by the humans, an explosive device. Meticulously concealed beneath the ice, the explosion ravaged the adjacent equipment, causing alien soldiers to disperse in panic. Surged through the alien ranks as they hurried to evaluate the situation. Their advanced sensors failed to spot the Reynolds team effectively concealed their presence by utilizing the landscape before the aliens could detect them. The unit regrouped as another trap was triggered, followed by still another, while the leader issued commands emphatically, endeavoring to reclaim authority. Although it became evident that they had miscalculated the capabilities of their adversary, this was not merely a planet to conquer, it was a battlefield, and they were ill-equipped for the type of warfare the humans were employing. Aliens attempted to reorganize, but humans launched another assault, this time from numerous directions, discreetly and swiftly. The special forces traversed the snow, eliminating alien soldiers individually amidst the cold. Previously derided by the invaders, it has now become their most formidable adversary, impeding their responses and blunting their perceptions. Attire built for harsh climates proved inadequate against the precision and expertise of the Frozen Guardians observed by Reynolds. As his squad performed their strategy with impeccable precision, Each shot and each blow was executed flawlessly. Was meant to disorient and undermine the aliens' confidence they were not merely confronting soldiers, but rather defeating an adversary that perceived itself as invulnerable. The aliens' advanced weaponry illuminated the night sky as they discharged their firepower. They plunged into the snow. Nevertheless, they were targeting phantoms the humans consistently maintained an advantage by utilizing the blizzard and terrain to remain concealed. For the first time, the alien commander experienced an emotion. He had not anticipated fear. This frozen wasteland was not as feeble as he had presumed. He believed the humans were less primitive than he had previously supposed, a trap, and the tundra they had derided was now turning against them as the conflict intensified, revealing to the alien commander that this would not be the effortless victory they had anticipated. The human possessed superior knowledge of the terrain, having adapted to it, whilst the aliens, despite their advanced technology, were not as familiar. Amidst the struggle for survival, Reynolds permitted himself a fleeting smile as he observed the mayhem ensue. The aliens had committed a grave error. They erred and were now facing the consequences, and this was merely the inception. The Reynolds crew traversed the snow rapidly, camouflaged against the glaring white expanse. Their breathing was steadily controlled as they prepared for the subsequent phase following the initial strikes. Had unsettled the extraterrestrials, but now the genuine challenge commenced. They were aware of the invaders. It would not be easily subdued, given the advanced technology at their disposal, yet technology is inconsequential without proper utilization. Comprehend the terrain on which you were engaged in combat. The humans had resided their entire lives in the frigid tundra, which was not merely the battlefield was their ally. They were intimately familiar with every inch and every fracture on the ice. With each shift in the wind, the aliens began to sense the burden of their hubris and their suits. Although the advanced were not designed for extended exposure to these circumstances, they were equipped with numerous gadgets. As they began to decelerate, Reynolds instructed his team to maintain their position. Dispersed over an extensive region, integrating effortlessly with their environment, he saw through his binoculars. Aliens endeavor to uphold order as their equipment begins to freeze. Once sleek machinery has now become sluggish, hardly able to operate in the extreme cold. Frost was accumulating on their visors, and the frigid wind penetrated their protective layers, which were deteriorating. Reynolds contemplated, yet he maintained his vigilance. They still possessed the upper hand. In terms of numbers and firepower, a single misstep could result in his team's overwhelming defeat. Precision is crucial. The aliens, recognizing their plight, attempted to reorganize. The commander issued commands for the soldiers to disperse and eliminate the human presence, as drones soared overhead. Searching for any indication of activity proved futile due to the snowstorm, which rendered their readings ineffective. The humans possessed an ideal concealment. Provided they were patient, the aliens would not locate them. Reynolds inspected his equipment. All was in order. He glanced to his left and observed one of his men, Thompson, awaiting the command to proceed. Martinez was hunkered, her rifle steady, prepared for the aliens. They proceeded slowly, their arrogance supplanted by tension, aware that something lurked beyond. They were unable to perceive it. They discharged their weapons indiscriminately into the tempest, trying to strike something, anything, yet the humans remained elusive specters, traversing stealthily in the snow, perpetually one step in advance, till the signal was received. Reynolds signaled, prompting his crew to mobilize from their respective locations. They initiated a synchronized assault, as bullets sliced through the frigid air, striking their targets with lethal precision. The accuracy of the alien soldiers rendered their armor ineffective against the precision of the human assault, with each shot meticulously timed. Each movement was intentional as the aliens attempted to retaliate, although they were disoriented. Discharging their guns into the void, their might was formidable, yet power held no significance. Devoid of a target, the humans utilized the environment to their advantage, vanishing under the snowbanks only to re-emerge. Seconds later, Reynolds moved purposefully, his weapon steady. He eliminated one alien after another. They were formidable, indeed, but they were unprepared for this type of confrontation. Humans lacked comparable technology, however they possessed a superior asset experience. They possessed the knowledge necessary for survival in this environment and the ability to combat the prevailing conditions. The aliens were acquiring this understanding via arduous experience. The leader of the alien forces was furious. He sensed power slipping away from him. This was intended to initially. It was a straightforward operation, a mere extraction. Nevertheless, his soldiers were now being selected. Overcome by an invisible power, he muttered a curse, commanding the remaining men were ordered to retreat and consolidate, necessitating a reevaluation of their tactics, however. Time was not on their side. The humans were unyielding, capitalizing on their advantage, aware that they possessed the upper hand. While the aliens were receding from their formerly formidable stature, they now engaged in a frantic scramble, their drones that once buzzed with assurance now diminished. The sky was now malfunctioning, unable to navigate the storm and the elements. They had disregarded as insignificant were countering their efforts. Reynolds advanced with his crew, narrowing the distance separating them from the retreating aliens revealed the terror evident in their motions. They were no longer the arrogant invaders who had derided Earth's tundra, were now the hunted in a territory they failed to comprehend. An explosion reverberated over the field when one of the alien vehicles detonated a concealed charge, propelling snow and debris into the air, further confounding the already terrified soldiers. Their formation disintegrated and their lines fractured. It was chaotic, and the humans flourished within it, as Reynolds could perceive. Victory is imminent nonetheless. He refrained from celebrating prematurely. There remains work to be accomplished. Although the aliens may be fleeing, they continue to pose a significant threat. One misstep could result in catastrophic consequences. His crew understood that circumstances could change abruptly. They remained focused and methodical, eliminating the surviving soldiers with merciless efficiency. The alien commander, now desperate, he ignited his ultimate contingency from the interior of their vessel. Substantial mechanical drones were developed for combat in extreme environments. Machines were well armored and armed with advanced weaponry that significantly surpassed anything the humans had encountered. Reynolds observed their approach and promptly modified his strategy. Drones represented a novel threat, one that could not be neutralized as readily as the alien warriors. Nonetheless, the humans possessed and the drones benefited from the hard tundra, which provided them both cover and mobility. They could maneuver more swiftly, hit with greater force, and vanish before the machines could acquire a target. The conflict turned once more, but Reynolds' his crew adapted by utilizing the landscape, snowstorms, and ice. The drones, despite their formidable capabilities, encountered difficulties in tracking them due to the extreme cold, which they exploited to their benefit. The devices discharged but failed to match human speed and agility. Reynolds meticulously targeted at the vulnerabilities in the drone's armor. It was challenging, yet he understood that if they could, by incapacitating a sufficient number of them, the aliens would be rendered defenseless once more. His crew adhered to his guidance, with each shot meticulously measured. With each deliberate movement, the drones gradually descended, while the people remained. Victory was achieved not due to superior weaponry, but because they comprehended the terrain. The tundra was not merely the frozen wasteland served as their most formidable weapon. The cold had worsened. The snow exhibited no indications of abating. The alien drones that had appeared so formidable seconds prior were now insignificant, beyond mere smoking wrecks concealed in the snow. Reynolds and his squad advanced with unwavering precision. That had delineated every step they undertook. Since the conflict commenced, there was no opportunity to contemplate their advancement. The mission was not yet complete. The remaining aliens had consolidated near their vessel, their numbers significantly diminished. The once confident formation was now disheveled, their ranks diminished by the relentless human attack and the harsh climate. Despite their circumstances, the leader, though visibly disturbed, had gathered the surviving soldiers for a final stand. They recognized their lack of escape routes. Evasion was not feasible, and the humans were encroaching. Reynolds surveyed the landscape. He observed the alien vessel in the distance, its sleek metallic surface half encased in ice, as the wind howled. Despite the storm, the cacophony of frantic activity within the alien stronghold was unmistakable as they fortified their defenses. Defenses readied for the unavoidable. They were ensnared, which rendered them. Reynolds conveyed to his troops that this would be the final effort. One had to use caution, as the aliens could be on the defensive. Nonetheless, they still possessed sufficient firepower to inflict significant damage if provoked. The humans possessed an advantage because to their lack of caution, yet they could not afford to misjudge their adversary. The stakes were high. The snow was dense beneath their boots as they advanced, their actions unhurried and deliberate. Each move was well scheduled. The aliens had established automatic perimeter defenses. Turrets surveyed the vast expanse for any indication of activity, yet the people were aware. They maneuvered discreetly, utilizing the terrain to their advantage, gliding through the storm like shadows, while Reynolds maintained a low crouch. Seeing as one of the turrets rotates back and forth, its sensors endeavoring to comprehend the fluctuating snow waited for the opportune moment, then signaled a piercing crack reverberated through the air as one of his snipers took the shot. The turret fired, spared, and then fell silent. One alien was eliminated while the others reacted. Soldiers promptly scrambled to bolster the vulnerable places in their defenses, firing indiscriminately into the storm aimed to strike a target. Although the people had previously relocated each time the aliens believed they had identified a target, however discovered only snow. Reynolds and his team persisted in their systematic advance. As the turrets were eliminated sequentially, the aliens became increasingly anxious. With each passing minute they could sense the news was wrapping around them. Yet there was nothing they could do to halt it. Their technology was exceedingly advanced. Ineffectual in this setting, the humans had used the Tundra into a weapon, rendering the aliens defenseless against it. The final turret was destroyed, rendering the route to the ship unobstructed. Reynolds signaled to his crew, and they advanced with weapons drawn. They were prepared. The aliens were now visible, clustered near the door of their spacecraft, with their commander positioned in front. Issuing commands in an incomprehensible language to the humans, however, it was inconsequential. The message was unequivocal. They were preparing for a final stand. Reynolds acted swiftly and issued orders. His crew was to disperse around the aliens, obstructing any potential escape routes for the humans. The same calm efficiency that characterized the entire operation exhibited no hesitancy or waste in movement. The stride advanced them toward their objective. The alien commander, perceiving his soldiers were encircled, raised a hand. In a gesture that might have signified surrender, Reynolds understood that this was not yet concluded. The aliens still possessed with a few tricks at their disposal. The commander issued a decisive command, and abruptly, a barrier of energy shields materialized. Surrounding the surviving soldiers, it constituted their final line of defense for a little period. The battlefield was silent as humans and aliens confronted one another, the wind roaring between them, until suddenly, warning, the shields flickered and expanded, repelling the humans as the aliens commenced firing, their guns ablaze. During the night, the humans reciprocated. Nevertheless, the shields absorbed the majority of the damage, resulting in a temporary stalemate. Reynolds recognized the necessity for prompt action. The prolonged duration of the situation would exacerbate its peril. He swiftly evaluated the circumstances. The shields were robust, yet they possessed a vulnerability. His squad had previously seen this type of technology. Energy shields necessitated substantial power for maintenance, particularly under certain conditions. If they could disrupt the power source, the shields would fail. He issued the command, and two of his soldiers detached from the main group, maneuvering to the side of the ship. The mission was unequivocal: eliminate the power source expeditiously. The remainder of the crew maintained pressure, diverting the aliens' fire and concentrating their attention. The minutes elongated as the conflict ensued. The storm swirled about them. The aliens maintained their position. However, it was evident their options are dwindling as their shields flicker, the effort to sustain them in the hard environment intensifying. As the humans used their firepower with increasing intensity, suddenly, a resounding crack reverberated through the air as the shields flashed for the final time. Prior to complete collapse, the power source had been obliterated by the aliens. Upon exposure, Reynolds promptly issued the command, and his crew proceeded to engage. During the final assault, the aliens retaliated with all their might. However, it was insufficient. The humans were excessively swift and coordinated. One by one, the alien soldiers found their advanced weaponry ineffective against the harsh realities of the battlefield, facing the alien commander. Observing the decimation of his soldiers, he made a final attempt to return to the ship. However, it was too late. Reynolds' crew had already arrived, eliminating any possibility of escape, while the leader remained obstinate. He raised his weapon to the finish, but it never discharged a single shot from Reynolds. The gun concluded the struggle. The humans stood victorious, their breaths taken. Burdened by the frigid atmosphere, they had succeeded. The invaders who had previously derided the tundra and its inhabitants were no longer the frozen wasteland that the aliens had perceived. Underestimation had become their downfall. Reynolds surveyed his crew with pride. They had demonstrated once more that Earth was not to be their home. This frozen wasteland had been misjudged, yet they defended it with all their resources until the wind subsided. However, the cold persisted with unrelenting bitterness. The battlefield, once tumultuous, was now. Reynolds stood silently over the alien commander's body, surveying the scene. Horizon and his squad accomplished the extraordinary by vanquishing a technologically superior adversary in one of the most inhospitable environments. Earth's habitats were present, although there was insufficient time for celebration as the task remained incomplete. The alien vessel continued to dominate the scene, its sleek appearance partially obscured by snow and ice within. Reynolds was aware of its presence. In the final phase of their mission, they could not leave any evidence of the invaders. Even a single signal could compromise their efforts. This had to conclude entirely. He issued the command, and the team approached the ship, systematically examining every angle to ensure thoroughness. No concealed traps or unforeseen dangers awaited them. Although the aliens may have been defeated, their technology remained perilous. As they neared the entry, the door was ajar due to the preceding conflict, and the interior was shrouded in darkness. The buzz of machinery was barely perceptible through the dense layers of snow and ice that had begun to accumulate within the walls. The temperature was marginally elevated, though not much. The ship's systems were deteriorating, unable to endure the extended exposure to the severe cold, and Reynolds could observe the frost ascended the console wires, igniting sparks as the ship's power grid fought to remain operational. The aliens had engineered their system for precision rather than durability in severe conditions, underestimating the challenges involved. How harsh Earth's tundra can be, Reynolds and his team advanced further within the ship, maneuvering through the constricted corridors. The inside was sleek, polished, and built for efficiency, including alien symbols and peculiar elements. Holographic displays adorned the walls, however most of the lights flickered, producing eerie shadows around the ship. Systems persisted in their failure. Their purpose was unequivocal: locate the central hub. If they could locate the ship's core and disable it, they could prevent any signals by taking control of the vessel. Were dispatched to notify any possible reinforcements. Upon arriving at the center chamber, they discovered what occurred. They sought the core, a substantial, luminous sphere of energy pulsating softly at the room's center. Encircling it were terminals and control panels, many of which were broken or dysfunctional owing to the severe cold. Reynolds signaled to his crew, prompting 2 members to approach the consoles in an effort to engage with the alien technology. They had trained for this, anticipating the necessity to disable alien systems. It was challenging, although they had analyzed the limited intelligence available on extraterrestrial technology, and now it was yielding results, unlike the others. Focused on deactivating the core, Reynolds remained vigilant. The ship's silence and stillness heightened his intuition. Something was off. They had confronted the extraterrestrial soldiers outdoors, yet it seemed there was an additional, unidentifiable element at play. Something concealed within the vessel prompted him to explore the room, his gaze sharpening as he detected subtle movement in the shadows. Before he could respond, the ship's lights flickered violently, and the core began to pulse rapidly as alarms blared. An extraterrestrial language resonating throughout the chamber in piercing mechanical tones. When the vessel commenced a certain process, the emergency procedure is presumably a self-destruct protocol intended to prevent the compromise of their technology. To prevent it from falling into enemy hands, Reynolds swiftly issued commands to his crew to shut it down. He now commanded his voice to penetrate the noise directed at the 2 soldiers. The operators worked frantically, their fingers maneuvering over the alien knobs in an attempt to overpower the system. However, the technology was foreign, and the process was more protracted than anticipated. The core's energy intensified, radiating more brilliance with each passing second, causing the ship to tremble and the walls to vibrate. The countdown commenced. They had few minutes, possibly seconds, before the entire building would implode, consuming everything in its vicinity. Reynolds sensed the heat radiating from the core now. In stark contrast to the frigid conditions outside, he understood the necessity of prompt action, lest they be overwhelmed by the encroaching elements. Ice and debris, followed by a harsh beep, caused the core's illumination to diminish. Soldiers successfully accessed the correct sequence, momentarily halting the self-destruct mechanism. Nonetheless, the ship remained compromised. It remained unstable. They had not completely deactivated it yet. Reynolds advanced closer. He scanned the alien symbols, seeking anything that could provide them with further time. A subsequent tremor shook the vessel, causing a portion of the ceiling to collapse and precipitate a cascade of ice and debris. One of the troops was struck and fell to the ground. Reynolds hurried over and extricated them from the debris. They were injured. However, time was dwindling as the ship's integrity was deteriorating. Reynolds made the call: they could not entirely disable the ship without jeopardizing their safety. Lives they had inflicted sufficient harm. The invaders had been vanquished, and that the ship was irretrievable. It was time to depart. He assisted the wounded soldier. Their feet conveyed to the rest of the crew, as they swiftly navigated back through the passageways. The ship's systems continued to malfunction, sirens sounded, and the flickering light produced a spectral hue, while the walls trembled with each step and Reynolds realized they were advancing. They exited into the frigid air once more, as the storm continued to rage. Outside, the ship groaned as its structure buckled under the pressure of the falling core they had scarcely evaded. The perimeter resonated with the sound of metal tearing as Reynolds turned to witness the ship implode. Imploding onto itself before vanishing into the frozen earth, entombed beneath layers of snow and ice. The mission concluded the invaders had departed, their vessel obliterated, and any possibility of their distress signal had been obliterated. Reynolds stood in the snow, breathing deeply, his gaze fixed on the location. Where the ship had previously been positioned, his troops assembled around him. Exhausted yet victorious, they confronted an adversary of superior advancement. Conditions that would have shattered weaker soldiers had demonstrated that they had conquered the Tundra, long derided by their adversaries. To serve as their paramount ally, it had safeguarded them, directed them, and now it had asserted that their adversaries, Reynolds, gazed across the icy expanse, a feeling of pride burgeoning within. They had defended their home, their planet, against a power that believed itself unbeatable. Accomplished in the most inhospitable atmosphere conceivable, the struggle concluded, although their obligation persisted. Report to base regarding the events that transpired and prepare for any developments. The only thing they heard was the distant wind, punctuated by the crunch of boots on the ice from each squad member. Stayed vigilant, scanning the horizon out of habit, despite the knowledge that no further hazards existed in the tundra. Transformed into a locus of both survival and conflict, and they had acquired the wisdom to be vigilant regardless of how tranquil the surroundings appeared. The surrounds appeared as Reynolds took the lead, his mind recapitulating the events of the preceding hours during which they confronted an adversary. Beyond all their training in advanced technology and superior firepower. Sheer hubris still, they were returning victorious, the humans. Their adaptability and knowledge of the country had proven to be the decisive aspects he felt a profound sense of pride, not only for himself but for every member of his squad operated with precision, where every step was deliberate and each decision vital to their success. Endless tundras extended before them, the snow reflecting the pale light of the clouded sky over the area. Appeared unchanged since the conflict, as if nothing had altered. Yet Reynolds understood that this location would always retain the recollection of the events that transpired. The invaders arrived believing they could seize anything they desired. Earth confronted them with an unforeseen power. They had misjudged not only the planet but also its capabilities. The inhabitants that resided there traversed in silence for hours as they returned to their stronghold, enduring the biting cold that had what was once a hardship has now become a familiar friend, serving as a continual reminder of the atmosphere that facilitated their victory. Was now an integral component of their warfare, as much a tool of conflict as their armaments and strategies. The tundra, with all its perils, had served a pivotal role in their triumph, transforming them into the soldiers they had evolved into. Upon reaching the outpost, the view of the metal structures partially obscured by snow was a nice relief. It was a modest base constructed to endure the weather, however it served as home for the time being, Reynolds indicated to the others. They approached the entrance, their pace diminishing as fatigue from the combat starting to take hold. Had dissipated, supplanted by the profound, bone-chilling lethargy that invariably ensued after a confrontation within the base. The warmth enveloped. They provided rapid relief, sufficient to mitigate the chill, but it served as a reminder of their survival. Reynolds removed his. As the burden diminished, he surveyed his crew, each member engaged in identical actions. Shedding their layers of protection and acclimating to the familiar environment of the base, no one uttered a word. Nonetheless, there was a persistent sense of concentration remains, as if their minds are still on the battlefield, anticipating the next move. Reynolds anticipated that the debriefing would occur shortly, as command would seek comprehensive information regarding the aliens' arrival. What type of technology was employed and how the conflict transpired, but for the moment silence prevailed, accompanied by a mutual recognition of their tremendous accomplishment. Few others would entirely grasp that the adversary had been significantly more advanced. Humans utilized all available resources to achieve victory. It was not just skill or training, but also their relationship to the established, their comprehension of survival that had tipped the scales in their favor. After a brief interval, Reynolds approached the small communication terminal situated at the room's periphery and composed a succinct message. Submit a concise report to command. Further details can be provided later. They needed to ascertain that the mission was successful and the extraterrestrial menace had been neutralized. He dispatched a message. Upon turning back to his crew, a palpable sense of calm togetherness enveloped them. Verbal communication was unnecessary. Each individual comprehended their experiences. They recognized that this was merely one skirmish in a far more extensive conflict. A triumph may signify that they have defended their planet, not merely against a physical threat directed against the notion that Earth was feeble and its inhabitants fragile. The aliens had derided the tundra, derided the notion that anything could endure in such an environment, yet they had erred, as Reynolds and his colleagues had. It was demonstrated that while the team prepared for the night, the cold pressed against the walls of the base, and Reynolds permitted himself a little moment of contemplation. This mission would be commemorated not alone for the battle itself, but for the tundra symbolized resistance against humanity, who had adapted to exist and flourish inside it. Unyielding grasp, the invaders arrived with hubris and sophisticated technology, yet ultimately it was the fun. Reynolds understood that the Earth and its inhabitants had triumphed, yet future conflicts were inevitable, as the universe was expansive. The likelihood that this was the only occasion Earth would confront such a peril was minimal, yet, for the now, they had triumphed and remained resolute. Their position in one of the most inhospitable locations on Earth, demonstrating that humanity was not to be underestimated. They had fought in the frozen wastes and emerged victorious in the tranquility of the base, yet their achievements were undervalued. As the wind howled outside and the cold persisted, Reynolds permitted himself a rare moment of tranquility. Accomplished their objectives, and for the now, that sufficed.